Hi, folks. Welcome to the I Write Radio podcast stroke videocast on Sunday. I've got Stuart Lockhead with me. I'm Norrie Stewart. Not sure if Jimmy Hutton will be joining us today. Fingers crossed, though. We're going to go have a quick chat about Mar and Kerr, I suppose.
Andrew Kerr.
It looks like he's taken over from Brewer. So we'll have a quick chat about the political programs. Then we have to talk about the English total lockdown. Well, it isn't a total lockdown. It isn't start of the pandemic style lockdown, but that will pull in various other strands, including the touchline runner general, Douglas Ross.
He's in trouble with FIFA.
The man's in trouble with everything. So, well, what you watch Sophie Ridge this morning, Stuart?
I tend to catch her. She's on before. She gets the same main guests as Mar, and although she's forensic, I quite like her.
I wish somebody would tell her the difference between England and the other three home nations.
Well, yes. Well, I suppose Mar does, being Scottish, sometimes remembers. So I'll stick with Sophie Ridge. Sophie Ridge had Gove on to start with. I saw a little bit of Gove on Mar, and I must admit, I thought Gove, by the time Gove got to Mar, he'd already rehearsed his answers. He'd presumably rehearsed them before he even came into the studio, but he'd already rehearsed his answers. He's certainly an awful lot more persuasive than Johnson.
The thing I noticed about Gove most today, I didn't catch Sophie Ridge, I watched Mar, is his voice. He's got that midnight radio disc jockey voice. It's very soothing, and I would call it smarmy, but I suppose if you're of another political persuasion, it would be persuasive. It's very silky.
Is it estuary? Is that what they call estuary accent? Because I'm never quite sure.
Well, he doesn't have a Scottish accent, does he?
No, he's lost that.
But
unlike your Sean on the background there.
I think it's a big part. The voice is a big part of why they roll him out. If he had that posh English accent that the old Etonians have, it wouldn't work so well. He sounds very persuasive, but he was still jumping through hoops and dancing on the head of a pin.
He's a very accomplished liar.
Well, yeah, he's good on his feet, Gove, but I'm afraid it's gone too far down the road for him to persuade me.
He wouldn't get past Andrew Neil these days, or Paxman, because he lies and lies and lies, and neither of those two would put up with it, or Piers Morgan.
So, I mean, generally, I take it on Ridge, he was just quizzed about I've got a real problem with him calling it a U-turn. Circumstances have forced them to jump off their ideological hobby horse and go for another lockdown, as far as I'm concerned.
She said she attacked him on what he said as a result of the SAGE report of the 21st of September. Now think where we are now, 1st of November. So that's like that's nearly 40 days of them denying that they were going to go for a lockdown. And he said very firmly, she played it, the clip from the end of September, him saying, no, we won't go for another lockdown, absolutely firmly. Did they have to do that? He could have said at the time, well, we might have to, but he didn't.
I think they're beginning to learn that lesson. Johnson's speech to the nation last night was a very different narrative. We can't be sure of the future. You know, essentially, they've been watching Nicola Sturgeon, and taken her tips. You know, Sturgeon has never been definite about any of these things. She's always said, we don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't have a magic wand. I fully expect at some point Gove or Johnson to come out with exactly that line. There is no silver bullet, you know.
Of course, politically, he couldn't say to anybody that he was following what had already happened in Scotland, Northern Ireland, and Wales, but he was quite happy to say he was following France, Italy, and Germany.
Yeah, exactly.
But politically, you can't admit that there anybody else is, any other politician in this country is better than him.
No, I don't think so. The other guest on Sophie Ridge and Mar was
Starmer.
Keir Starmer. I think, can we leave Keir Starmer to the end? Because we've got our pet Labour member with an interview with you, I think. Yes.
Yes.
So we'll have a wee chat and then let Mr. Attridge give his opinion. I think this has been a disaster. This is going to force Scottish Tories to outright lie this move to a near enough full lockdown by Boris the Boss. I see that Douglas Ross has already come out, and it possibly less than an hour ago in the Herald online, saying that he's going down to London to ask them to be more flexible with the furlough scheme.
I think the phrase that somebody else mentioned since yesterday, the question that arises is, and it affects Northern Ireland, Wales, and Scotland, this furlough scheme, oh, it sounds wonderful, it's been extended for a month, but what if Scotland doesn't need a lockdown until after the furlough scheme, the current furlough extension runs out? And the question, and the expression was, can Scotland bank the money that's being paid to English employees for Scotland in case we need a lockdown in Scotland in the future?
But that's the wrong question. Because if England has no need of furlough because they get on top of the pandemic, but Northern Ireland, which is having a really hard time just now, if Northern Ireland needs it, why shouldn't Northern Ireland get it?
Mm-hmm.
And likewise, Scotland and Wales.
And why can't they simply extend furlough for up until Easter next year like Germany has?
Well, I mean, the question here is, why does furlough only apply when England needs furlough?
I think the mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham, asked that same question.
Well, that is effectively the question that should be asked.
It's only because London and the south of England needs it now that it's being extended.
Well, that's the question.
That's absolutely stupid politics, isn't it?
Well, I can't believe they've been this silly. I mean, I can believe it because it's happened, but I think they believed they were out of the woods and they wouldn't need to do this. And they actually believed that the devolved nations were playing silly buggers with them. That's what I think they actually believe in the cabinet.
Well, it's about 10 days ago, and you and I had no, it wasn't heated, but we had a debate about whether what was happening at number 10 was chaos or deliberate. It looks, I have to agree, I have to agree, it just looks like chaos. They're just useless at it, aren't they?
Well, the decision makers don't seem to understand. I mean, I don't think Michael Gove is an idiot. I think Michael Gove knows exactly what this looks like.
Don't forget, he's the leader in waiting, isn't he?
Well, but I think he knows exactly what it looks like in Scotland, Ireland, and Wales. You can have furlough extended when England needs it. You cannot have it under any other circumstances. And effectively, Wales is in the position England's gone into now, even more so than Scotland. And they must be going absolutely mental There's no money. There's no money. We can't give you any money. Oh, England needs it. There's plenty of money.
Is it possible? Now, we've got to mention Douglas Ross, the esteemed or not leader of the Tory branch in Scotland, who's apparently going to tell them down in London that you've got to start taking notice of what are the impact of all these decisions, especially in Scotland, because you're really just driving independence. They're right in the front of the train, driving the engine towards independence for Scotland.
Well, effectively, when sorry, I was about to say English. What I actually mean is a Scottish Tory comes out and makes a statement. You can almost guarantee 2 weeks later they have to backtrack on it, which means they're not in the loop in any way, shape, or form. They have no idea what's been talked about in cabinet. So nobody is going to the Scots in their own party and saying, look, this is becoming a possibility. You need to get this message spun in such a way as you look good with it. They're not even bothering.
And yet it hasn't dawned on them that after Brexit and this pandemic, the biggest issue facing them for the United Kingdom, I'm sure there's a lot of people in London know this, is the breakup of the union.
I think they believe, and the message from the SNP has not dissuaded them of this belief that they can just keep saying no to a Section 30. I think they believe they have control of this and they get to veto an independence referendum until it's 58 in support of the union and 42 in support of independence. That's what I think they believe.
Why would they have such confidence?
Because the party driving the independence argument has told them they can be confident, because the SNP are not even going to discuss a plan B at their conference now. So it's a Section 30 or nothing.
And do they have plants, MI5 or whatever you call them? But we know they've always had the police and the authorities in London. They've had plants inside the animal rights movement, IRA movement. Are they inside the independence movement? Of course they are.
Yes, but I don't think they've got the kind of influence that would stop the SNP going for a referendum. And I don't think, I actually don't think they've got enough influence to stop them discussing a plan B. That's people, that is your gradualist group. That's the people that you believe are holding it up, the gradualists.
So they're not got plants, MI5 plants
I've
amongst
no
the
idea,
gradualists.
Stuart. I'd be very surprised if they didn't have people in there. But I don't think they have people in positions of power to influence the big decisions. They'll have people prepared to report back to them, I've no doubt.
What do you think of this new assembly announced by AUOB? They seem to be turning into the Marches organisation. They seem to be turning into a new alternative source of power to coordinating all the yes groups across Scotland into a.
I have no problem with an umbrella organisation that make it easier for the various yes groups and bits and bobs around the yes campaign, the likes of ourselves and, you know, the other people that are doing media. I have no problem with that being coordinated so it's easy to find. I have a problem if that umbrella group decides to start or tries to dictate to the yes movement.
Well, they are self-appointed leaders, which is a little bit of a worry. But if you've only got two choices, the SNP running the entire campaign, which generally speaking, you wouldn't have all these independent yes groups all over the country still active if everybody wanted the SNP to run the whole campaign. Or do you have a self-selecting group like AUOB? Surely we need a third.
You've got the self-selecting group that kind of grew out of the Commonweal, which was the Constitutional Convention, which is a left-wing group.
I'm not sure. I mean, I've registered for the AUOB online assembly for the 14th of the month. So that's a fortnight.
Well, I have no objection to talking shops, etc., etc. But when they start trying to dictate to yes what they should and shouldn't do, that's when my problems start. I have no problem if they totally agree with my stance, of course. But that's human nature.
Yes.
Unfortunately, that won't be the case.
Before we abandon Douglas Ross completely, because we've got lots to talk about, I just need to let the viewers and listeners know that apparently Douglas Ross doesn't come up very well in the most recent poll, which we no doubt can cover at some point. Just it's hard to know where to steer this show today, isn't it, Norrie?
Well, I find the most interesting thing that's happening is Douglas Ross is being led by focus groups now in Scotland. Anything free school meals, suddenly it's Tory policy in Scotland that every kid gets a free breakfast and a free lunch.
Yeah.
That's never been Tory policy, but it is in Scotland now because there was a hoo-ha about school meals south of the border.
Well, look.
Now he wants the furlough scheme to be malleable, so when the devolved nations need it, they can use it. That's not Tory policy south of the border.
I know. Look, we've been all through the first half of the year on social media. I kept noticing how our cohort of 6 Scottish MPs in particular, but also some other MSPs, kept putting Scotland down. Every opportunity they would attack the Scottish government, whether it was good for Tory poll numbers or not. They just couldn't stop themselves. And they seem to me to be driving the engine towards independence. It looks as though Douglas Ross has realised that was a big mistake.
Yeah, but I mean, in future, you know this thing they say about Thatcher's greatest legacy was creating Tony Blair?
Of course.
New Labour. Well, I have a funny feeling that Douglas Ross's legacy might be to create a Tory party that's a cross between the Liberal Democrats and the Labour Party. Because it appears that every time there is a public outcry about policy coming out of the cabinet at Westminster, Douglas Ross gets on a different horse, which is diametrically opposed.
What's his, you've got to ask, I mean, is he genuine? Is he really trying to steer an alternative course for Scottish Tories?
Well, if he is, him and Murdo Fraser need to get together and start a new party.
Well, they certainly, the most recent vote that mattered, the one about school meals in England, he apparently abstained. He was the leader of the group of 6. The other 5 voted to abandon these school meals.
I don't think he's got any authority over the Westminster MPs. I think the only authority he has is with the MSP sitting in Holyrood.
What about?
I mean, they can't have had a discussion about this.
He would appear to have the ear of the media, as usual, a bit like Ruth Davidson. I mean, they're presumably trying to build him up like they did Ruth Davidson, give him a big media presence because he certainly needs it.
Well, I mean, he's no Ruth Davidson, that's for sure.
Look, I mean, let's put it this way, he's in trouble with FIFA. Apparently, they produced a leaflet, the Tories. Here's your new leader, get to know Douglas Ross. And there he was in his photograph, running the line as a referee with his big FIFA badge on it. And apparently that is completely against FIFA rules.
Oh, well. It won't matter. I mean, he's not going to dent the unionist vote. It's not going to happen for him. I see Willie Rennie had a Zoom meeting with his entire party.
Did he bother? Why?
They had their conference, and he's coming out for federalism, because nobody's really interested in independence. But federalism, they're really interested in, because that's all they talk about, obviously. Oh, no. Education in the NHS is what they talk about all the time. But federalism. Oh, and a bit of federalism.
I'm surprised you even mentioned him.
I just thought it worth mentioning that
he showed up on Andrew Kerr's Politics Scotland show. It would appear he's taken over the mantle of Gordon Brewer.
Andrew Kerr, not Willie Rennie.
Yes, Willie Rennie turned up on the Andrew Kerr Politics Scotland show. Sorry about that. And Andrew Kerr has been presenting the after Scottish Government press briefing show at a lunchtime on weekdays, hasn't he? So he seems to have inherited that mantle. I'm not sure where he stands. I'd assume that he's been younger and thinking about his future more than an old hand. He'll do what he's told by the bosses.
I got a memory that Andrew Kerr was caught on camera in the BBC offices with a saltire on his desk, which made me very suspicious. I hope the BBC aren't employing independistas. That would ruin their reputation. Excuse me a minute.
Did you see Brian Taylor's sort of goodbyes?
Toodaloo the new.
It was quite late at night. I don't know. It was late evening in Holyrood in the lobby, and whoever was asking him a question, I guess the last thing he said was "Toodaloo the new." His catchphrase, you could say. He looked quite emotional about it.
Well, he's been there a long time.
I got to remind everybody that doesn't know that in Scotland, on BBC Scotland, on their politics internet page, you cannot comment on you couldn't comment on Brian Taylor's blog, which was obviously very interesting. Whereas you can in Northern Ireland and Wales.
Yeah, but that's been the case for many, many years.
Why?
They open up the comments occasionally.
How do they? When did I thought that would have been news on its own.
Their excuse has always been they don't have enough people to moderate it. That it can't be properly moderated. So rather than
you could sign on with an email to be allowed to take part, and then if you're a bad boy, you could be banned.
Sure, free speech is not for the likes of us. You should know that. Especially if it involves criticizing anti-Beeb.
Yes, they seem to be very touchy, do they not? What about this poll? I see James Kelly, our analyst of polls, has had a wee look at that.
Well, he's suspicious that it might be a unionist poll. Well, I don't know why he's suspicious. The guy that commented on it is a unionist, I would presume, as he was May's advisor at one point, was he not? Or communications director or something?
I think he was employed as to do internal polling for Theresa May when she was Prime Minister.
Yeah, so I don't think there's much suspicion about it. I think it's a verifiable fact. But he seemed to think the depth of it meant that there was a lot of money thrown at it.
He pointed out one unique thing about it, which was that it was an online poll. The 58% poll Ipsos Mori one recently, that was a telephone poll, and apparently they tend to be more positive for independence, have done historically. This was the first online poll that exceeded 55%.
I can't. That's counterintuitive to me that a telephone poll would be more pro-indie. I find that quite strange, but there you go.
And there was quite a bit of interesting detail in there. I looked at the question. Apparently the people that questioned were swing voters. I don't know.
That's the way it read, but I wonder if it was just a portion of the 1,000 people questioned were swing voters.
I'll need to spend some time on that poll again.
Yeah, I need to look at it in depth. I think maybe we now need to talk about the Labour Party, unfortunately.
Yes.
Starmer's was on both Ridge and Marr this morning.
I liked, I noticed that Ian McWhirter had a go at him. That's Alexa answering me there, in case you heard that. I liked the headline, Keir the Killer has asserted truly bold authority by banishing the magic grandpa.
That's very flowery for McWhirter, is it not?
Magic grandpa. I didn't know that Corbyn was called that. But bear in mind that Corbyn got, but the 2007, he was very popular. He, when he became leader, Labour became the largest political party in Europe.
By membership.
By membership. They, well, general election 2017 against Cameron, he got within 2% of beating Cameron.
Well, we'll get the easy bit out of the way first. Starmer, as far as COVID is concerned, will support the government when they do what he wants, was basically all he said. He doesn't have a different plan. For him, it's all about timing, and the government were too late, but he will continue to support the government and request that everybody obeys the government, and the government's right finally now. So I'm going to presume he was asked on Marr if he would become part of a government for national unity against COVID, and he didn't answer.
I never heard of that idea up to now.
Well, I have to say, if I was an opposition politician at the moment, I wouldn't step 1 foot into a room with Boris Johnson when it comes to the decision making about COVID. It's all been too slow, and that's the problem.
I suppose that's, as far as I'm concerned, I can't see why he would even consider getting involved in that mess.
I mean, he's not going to get to make the decisions. He's just going to hear about them, and he'll be told what to do. The Tories aren't going to put it to a vote. If they want to open up to save business at the cost of X lives, they will open up to save business.
Well, there's another big decision that they might base their strategy on, of course. Can they hand out more contracts to all their friends?
I think I'd be very surprised if there isn't Labour moves afoot to make sure there's better scrutiny. If there isn't, they're missing a trick. They should be hammering on that door.
I believe there might be legal action being taken.
I'm not sure it's the Labour Party that's taking it, though.
No. Maybe Julian Maughan again.
I think it is. But that's a door that they need to keep open. Although in the country, will it make a difference? I don't know. I don't know. Unless you can prove that there are actually members of parliament who've made money out of this, I don't think it's going to impact greatly.
I'm convinced that they've moved into gangster mode, where they, especially when you look at how Cummings got away with his driving test to Barnard Castle. The more they brass that out, the more they can get away with lying, the more they can get away with handing out contracts to their friends. Nothing will happen.
Well, the more they can get away with saying they're in favour of free school meals.
I mean, you look what's happened across the Atlantic. We've got this vote coming up. Is it Monday, Tuesday? Tuesday. Whatever it is. And over there, the main weapon wielded against Biden by the Trump organization has been the idea that Biden's son did was involved in some corrupt contracts in the Ukraine.
I would wonder if there's any other sort of contracts in the Ukraine at the moment.
And we think this is a squeaky clean country ruled with the rule of law in charge. I don't think so.
Well, one of the interesting things that's going the rounds just now about America is that Biden is outspending Trump about 3-1.
You mean it's his big money is backing him?
Which, as always, there will be a price to be paid for that money.
Of course.
And
it'll be bankers' money, one way or
well,
other.
there was quite an interesting discussion on Radio 4 the other night about the similarities between Labour and the Democrats, the Tories and the Republicans. And the chap who was a long time America watcher basically said you can't do it that way because they are so much further right. There is as much in common between the Tories and the Democrats as there is between the Tories and the Republicans, which I think definitely sounds true to me on what I've read and what I've followed, which I thought was quite interesting.
I think New Labour certainly like to fashion themselves in the style of the Democrats.
Well, they were far enough right to see close comparisons. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that an ex-Labour leader was across getting trained by the Democrats. Miss Dugdale at the last election was across there.
She indeed.
Yeah.
I wonder when she's going to come out for independence.
I don't know, as soon as she makes up with her dad. See, he's back on Twitter. Jeff Dugdale. I've seen him around for a while.
Yeah, I noticed that.
But he came back a few months ago.
Wonder, maybe I have no idea why he was away. Don't forget her partner is an MSP at the moment, SNP and MSP.
Well, do you think she ties her to the bed every night and beats her?
You will support independence.
Who knows? Maybe Miss Dugdale has turned our MSP MP. MSP.
You know the trouble with the Labour Party at the moment, and the possible divide, and the accusation is that its enemies have used the anti-Semitism, so-called anti-Semitism inside the Labour Party as a weaponized by the Blairite wing to destroy the left. I'm going to quote you what Ian McWhirter says in his article. Immediately below that, he says, "Indeed, there is a weird echo in the Corbyn saga of recent events in the SNP. A beloved radical former leader is shunned and cast adrift for heinous offences of which they are innocent in the eyes of their supporters. Many of Alex Salmond's admirers in the national movement are convinced there has been a plot to remove him, and that the SNP leadership cynically weaponized sexual allegations to do him down." Interesting that he sees the similarity.
Well, I don't see them as similar at all. I'm sorry, the attack on Corbyn, this wasn't an attack on anti-Semitism in the Labour Party. It was an attack on Corbyn.
An attack on the left?
Well, no, it was an attack on Corbyn. The whole reason that every newspaper in the land, every political party in the land, and every Blairite in the land was prepared to accept it at face value was to get rid of Corbyn.
Yeah, but because Corbyn was of the left, militant.
Well,
no, Momentum, what they were called, wasn't the left-wing group inside the Labour Party?
But I mean, I'm sorry, anybody that thinks it was other than a weapon aimed straight at Corbyn wasn't he awake?
Yes, but it's because Corbyn represents the left.
Well, actually, I don't think it would have mattered.
You just said that the Blairite wing, well, that's the right wing of the Labour Party, whereas Corbyn still represents the left.
Well, yeah, but what I'm saying here is John McDonnell didn't get dragged into it.
He's a
None of
bit
the
smooth.
union leaders got dragged into it.
John McDonnell was a
This
smoother
gun was
operator.
aimed. This gun was aimed at Corbyn's head. It was
Well,
to decapitate Corbyn.
time, of course, will out, and we'll slowly find out whether I can see a corollary. I can see why Ian McWhirter would say that. Of course, we have got insider information or an insider interview with Phil Attridge.
Well, yeah, but I'm sorry. I've said all along, this has been the most effective smear campaign I can remember in British politics. And everybody jumped on the wagon. Everybody, including supporters of Corbyn who are now sitting in the cabinet with Starmer, the shadow cabinet with Starmer. It was an appalling abuse of free speech.
I think "was" is the wrong word, Norrie.
Well, you could be right about that, because I think this fire will burn. And I could easily see escalating into a split in the Labour Party.
What was his last thing? Was it him? Was it Ian McWhirter the last say? Yes. If Corbyn apologises and Starmer allows him back, Labour will be accused of harbouring anti-Semitism. The Tories can't believe their luck.
No, it's entirely true. I do not believe the Tories believe in Christmas, except in this case. The press, Labour Party members themselves, and certainly the right wing of the Labour Party could well be responsible for emasculating the Labour Party for generations. This will not go away.
It's not going to help Labour in Scotland.
Well, if there is an actual physical split and another party of the left gets created out of this, they'll die. They won't succeed because they'll be tarred as the anti-Semite left wing. But there will be people who stay in the Labour Party whose sole ambition is to stab the Blairites through the heart.
You've got the situation, of course, that if you're going to get elected in England these days, the English electorate have been shifted over the last 30 years to the right. That's my perception. And if you want to get elected as a Labour Party, you have to be a Blairite-style Labour Party.
Yeah, and the Blairites did that.
Whereas if you want to get an energised membership and get the crowd at Glastonbury Festival singing your name, you have to be Corbyn.
If you want a movement, I did have a wee chuckle to myself when Starmer referred to the Labour movement. If you want a movement, you need a Jeremy Corbyn. You need somebody that can whip them up. And who would ever have believed Jeremy Corbyn was the man to do that? He's hardly an inspiring looking figure, is he? But Starmer's isn't the man.
I discovered this week, I think I'll leave it to, it's part of the interview I had with Phil, so I'll leave what I was about to say there.
Well, do you want to just go to the interview?
Yes, I'll line it up. First of all,
we should introduce Mr. Attridge. Those of you that have followed us through our various iterations will know Phil as one of our regular podcasters. Ooh, must be what, a year or more since he joined us regularly. But Phil is an ex-Labour councillor and still a Labour Party member. But he's also an independent supporter. So that'll give you some idea. And that's him up on the left behind Stuart.
Now we'll try. Have you allowed me to share yet? Yes?
Yes, I have.
Well, hopefully this will work, but I've changed my, so I may have to change it again. Here we go.
Hi Stuart, how are we doing? All right?
Yes, very well. I would like to hear what you
have to change my sound again. I've got this wrong.
Is this going to take a while?
The latest douchey in the Labour Party. I gather Mr. Keir Starmer, the current leader, has stabbed your previous leader in the back. What's your opinion on the situation?
You getting this, Norrie?
Oh, one word describes it. Purge. It's a purge. That's it. He has, Jeremy Corbyn
Loud enough?
hasn't done anything. In fact, it seems obvious that Starmer hasn't understood the report that that Corbyn, criticised, made a comment on, and in the report it says people that criticise, make reports. He basically said it was overestimated, exaggerated. Seems pretty true to me.
Well, look, I read a piece by Peter O'Born and David Hurst, both former Daily Telegraph writers, not famous for caring what happened to the Labour Party. They described Keir Starmer's decision and action rather like trying to do a Neil Kinnock or a Tony Blair, where Neil Kinnock, of course, had to deal with militant, and Tony Blair had to decided to get rid of the Clause 4 and invented New Labour. Is this what Keir Starmer's trying to do? Stamp his authority on the Labour Party?
Oh, well, it's always been that, I suppose, their dream, the Atlanticist from New Labour, to try and turn the Labour Party into some kind of Democrat party. What scared them is that British Labour Party is the largest political party in Europe. And while these people that sit in Westminster forever, it seems with some of them, they don't like this. They don't like being accountable. There's going to be, you've got the unions now. You've got 7 big unions, which are going to be looking at affiliation. Unite has already took off 10% of, that's 50,000 members, or even 20, and they're looking to withdraw more. They've only got the support of three unions, USDOR, GMB, and Unison. He's purging it. He's trying to. It's the acquiescence of a lot of the left. I mean, there's a lot of them. You're getting this call for unity. But it's quite obvious. Starmer and co. don't want unity.
Yes, I noticed that Ian McWhirter also had a bit of an interesting headline on his article about this today. What did he say? Keir the Killer has asserted truly bold authority by banishing the magic grandpa. Yeah.
A person that's always been pretty quiet, pretty fastidious in his work. That's Corbyn. I personally thought he was a bit too laid back for leadership, but I think they were really gobsmacked when he got elected, because normally the left just put up somebody, it's your turn now. But the simple fact that all these representatives of the Labour Party chose to ignore the members of the party, just call them all different names, because they're the only ones that can run the Labour Party. I mean, I think it's rather sad. It's very good for Scottish independence, and if you look at the polls, it's not very good for Labour down south either. Apparently, the membership are exiting because the Labour Party headquarters are asking the membership, apparently, allegedly, from other departments to help them because people leaving. Leaving the party. But normally if you leave the party, you just cancel your direct debit, so no big deal. But maybe some people are just actually want to make a point about it. Interesting times for the Labour Party, but up here, I mean, talk about giving the kiss of death to the Labour Party up here. I mean, their vote went up here a bit with because of the Corbyn. We had a wee bit of a Corbyn bounce here. But now after that, and there's Labour Party members leaving all over as well. So then maybe they don't mind that. Then they'll get their money from where they really want to, like the Democrats.
It's not as though Corbyn did desperately badly. I mean, in the 2017 election, he was only 2% behind the Tories, led by Cameron.
Oh, yeah, and if you consider this, quite possibly could have won the last election, because when you look at the amount of votes, it was only in the thousands in the sort of five-figure bracket, spread over with the wins. You know, all these young Turks, and that's not really a nice. Just these really right-wing Tories that appear to be abound in getting in. You know, the Conservative Party's been taken over, by the way. They don't even realise that. You know, they don't realise that it's been taken over by these entries. I suppose a conservative, sort of the conservative version of militant, you know, but from the other side.
Well, look,
yeah, that's sad.
I'll give you a quote you can respond to. The final quote from the Peter O'Born article. It may be that Keir has simply destroyed his reputation for moral and intellectual integrity and inflicted a mortal wound on the soul of his party.
Probably. I mean, where did he come from? Came from the CPS. Apparently he was head of the CPS when the CPS was strong-arming the Swedes to not drop charges against Assange.
I saw that.
If you're looking at someone that's responsible, I mean, this is a guy, you know, this kid's he's great. He's just Mr. Establishment. I mean, he's got a Union Jack stance on his, you know.
Why is he called Sir?
So, yeah, well, that's another bit. I think that's, why would you vote a Knight of the Realm?
Yeah, but how did he get to be a Sir? What did he do for that?
Oh, that's probably got a 30-year look on it to find out what he did, yeah? Because he's been involved in that for a long time, and, you know, a lot of these things. DPP, was he not Director of Public Prosecutions for a while? And, yeah.
Yeah. Look, I think perhaps we should wind this one up. I'd love to talk to you again, especially we could consider the possibility that if the Labour Party is clearly, you're saying, has been infiltrated by the establishment, yeah?
Well, that was it always has been. The Labour Party always has been. I mean, you do tend to get it when you get a Tory when you elect a Tory government, you get a Tory government. When you elect a Labour government, you get a British government that happens to be Labour. It's still, you know, it was New Labour that whacked out most of it. Again, we're trying to destroy the links with trade unions, etc., etc.
Can I finish this interview with reminding people that Lady Thatcher, we'll call her Lady Thatcher, in this context, announced that her best legacy was Tony Blair and New Labour.
Yeah. It's not New Labour. It's still called the Labour Party now.
Okay.
Yeah, they have quietly dropped that. And if you mind, they changed the colour from red. I think it was to avocado green. I just wondered if the avocados were sliced or smashed.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Phil. Thank you very much, Phil Attridge, for that. Thank you.
There you go.
Phil's always good value. And I believe he knows how to work Zoom now, so we might get him on.
I think he knows how to work it.
Yeah, I think so.
He's short on technology. Apparently, he's expecting new technologies very soon.
Yeah, he's buying a laptop. My God, I think he destroyed the other one with a mash hammer. Anyway, that'll do us for today, I think. Thanks for listening, folks. Thanks for being on, Stuart.
Thanks for having me, Norrie.
And we'll catch you all tomorrow. At which point I fully expect another U-turn, and we'll all be in the pubs by Tuesday. Cheers for now. Oh, Tuesday, we've got the American election.
Well, but we won't know what's happened until Wednesday, and then they'll have hanging chads.
Well, by Wednesday, I expect to see tanks in the street with Trump flags. Still. Cheers for now, folks.
Yeah.
As I say, thank you for being with us.